So, you want to develop mountain strength? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the first episode of Training for Mountaineering. We'll be covering strength training and how it exactly relates to mountaineering. Strength training is an important aspect of any training program. It's a great place to start if you're just beginning, and it carries over fantastically into endurance training as well, which, for mountaineering, is a very large part of the training. Because endurance is a main focus of training for mountaineering, sometimes people forget to train purely for strength, forgetting the importance of strength and how it relates to endurance. So you don't have to worry about that because we'll be covering everything to do with strength in this episode. You might confuse strength training with just lifting weights, but it isn't as simple as that. Weight training varies drastically, and depending on the intensity and the amount of repetitions, you could be training for a different kind of stimulus than the one that you desire. For, in this instance, that would be strength. So if you're new to training and you're just approaching going into the gym and starting to do some weight training, the weight training that you may be doing right now is not actually strength training. Rather, it's endurance training. Strength training alone is actually very important for overall health and athleticism. It develops power, speed, and boosts joint health, all things that are necessary to be strong in the mountains. So, what exactly is strength? Strength is your body's ability to produce force, and the more force that your body can produce, the more efficient it is at exerting itself. For the mountaineer or the hiker, your strength translates into your body's ability to exert small amounts of energy over a long amount of time. Now, this might sound like what endurance training is, but to become an efficient endurance athlete, you also need a very strong foundation of strength. As we mentioned briefly in the previous episode, speed and power are both very important attributes to possess in the mountains. These two attributes translate into your ability to move quickly up and back down the mountain. Being able to move quickly in dangerous mountainous terrain translates into your safety, as you want to be minimizing the amount of time that you actually spend on the mountain. Mountaineering might seem like a fun thing to do, but the reality is that it's a very dangerous activity, and we want to work to maximize our safety. So training your strength and being able to move quickly is one of the ways that we can actually do that. Strength training for mountaineering includes training muscles that are key to movement in the mountains. So exercises such as the bench press and bicep curls, while may look flashy, are not very relevant to mountaineering and hiking. This is because you need to develop functional strength. Functional strength is training strength that you will utilize for your specific activity. So, for mountaineering and hiking, you want to be developing strength in your lower body, your back, and your forearms. You don't need to carry with you excess muscle fiber in other muscles that you aren't exactly going to be using. This is just going to make it so that you have to rest for longer periods of time and that your body requires more energy to function. You can't really afford these things in the mountains. You need to be purpose built for this activity. Mountaineering specific strength training aims to turn you into a lean, mean mountain machine, not a power lifter. I'd just like you to picture in your mind what an endurance mountaineer athlete looks like and what the world's strongest man looks like. Both of them need to train strength, but as you can see, the outcomes are vastly different. Strength can be built through following an intense weightlifting program that focuses on lifting heavy weights for low repetitions. To optimally train strength, you need to lift within the rep range of 1 to 8 with an intensity of 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max. Your 1 rep max is the maximum amount of weight that your body is able to lift, and that translates into the maximum amount of force that your body is able to produce for a given movement. Knowing your 1 rep max is important because you need to be training strength at a specific intensity, which we mentioned before, 80 to 90%. And if you don't know your 1 rep max, you don't know what the correct intensity is. And if you don't know what the correct intensity is, you might be wasting your time. Performing a 1 rep max can be quite a dangerous activity if you aren't technically proficient in the exercise. It risks your health regardless if you are proficient or not. For any given movement that you want to test your 1 rep max for, if you do 1 to 5 reps, you can accurately calculate what your 1 rep max is by using various different online calculators. There are heaps out there, but I will link one in the description that I've used in the past. You need to make sure that you are calculating between 1 to 5 reps, however, because if you go over 5 reps, the accuracy of this calculator decreases. So then, what are the key exercises that we should be adding into our training routines? Well, I've got 4 of them which I believe to be the best for training strength for mountaineering. But before we jump into these 5 exercises, I'd like to take a moment to differentiate between what training for strength and what training for endurance actually is. Some people discussing strength training for mountaineering confuse actually training for strength and training for muscular endurance. In order to train actual strength, it's pretty simple. You need to lift heavy weights, and you need to lift them for a low amount of repetitions at the correct intensity. Doing an exercise such as a calf raise that you typically do for a high number of repetitions at a weight that you can actually sustain to do for that amount of repetitions, that's not going to train strength. And you can do as many of those as you want. Your calf is not going to get stronger. It's going to develop endurance. Now, these things aren't exactly complicated once we know right from wrong, and it's fairly straightforward. If you want to train for strength, you lift heavy, you lift at low reps, you're going to get stronger. If you want to train endurance in your muscle, you're going to lift more than 8 reps at an intensity where you can sustain movement for, 20 to 30. That's going to give you muscular endurance. Strength training exercises are also rarely isolated movements, like exercises that you would do to train muscular endurance. They're full body movements or compound lifts. They employ a whole different variety of muscles, ranging from lower body muscles to all the way up to upper body muscles for just one movement. So they're incredibly efficient at developing overall strength rather than just isolating one specific muscle. With that hopefully being cleared up, my top 4 exercises for developing strength for mountaineering and hiking are the barbell back squat, the pull-up, the deadlift, and the weighted step-up. The barbell back squat is the cornerstone of any weight training program. Many sports and disciplines rely on using the barbell back squat to develop large amounts of strength for the full body, all different kinds of muscles, and this type of training translates well into pretty much any sport, and mountaineering is no exception. The back squat works your calves, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your lower back, your hip flexors, and your upper back, and all of those muscles are incredibly useful for mountaineering, so this is one exercise that you should not avoid. Before performing any weightlifting exercise, it is important to warm up the muscles that you'll be using for that exercise. For the lower body, I like to warm up on the Stairmaster for 5 to 10 minutes. You don't want to push yourself here, but just enough to break a light sweat. Next, I follow with a few dynamic stretches for the hips, hamstrings, and glutes. This gets the joints feeling flexible. Now, before I begin to perform the exercise, I make sure firstly to do one set of no weight on the bar for 15 repetitions for a further warm up. To perform the back squat, grip the bar with your hands placed as close to your shoulders as possible. This will help to keep your upper back stiff during the exercise. Next, unrack the bar by propelling yourself underneath the bar and pushing your hips forward. Take a few steps back and get into a shoulder width stance. Some people find a wider stance is more comfortable and helps with their form. Once you're ready, take a deep breath in and tense your core. You want to firstly hinge at your hips before the knees. This will help keep your back in a neutral position. After hinging at the hips, you can then sink down through the knees into a squat position. Try to squat as deep as you can, aiming for about 90 degrees of knee flexion. Once in the squat position, drive the weight up through the middle of your feet to finish the exercise. Cues that may help you are to twist your feet outwards during the squat and to make sure that you're looking forward throughout the movement. Some of you, like myself, may find that having your heels in an elevated position helps you get the depth of the squat that you need. Doing a squat with your heels elevated slightly is completely fine, and if anything only adds additional tension on your calves, which is not a bad side effect by any means. You can never exercise your calves too much. They're very stubborn. The back squat is a very technical movement, and if you are new to weight training, it may be best that you do a lesser exercise such as a leg press. Next up, we have the pull-up. This is the key upper body movement for developing functional back strength for mountaineering and other types of climbing. I like to warm up for the pull-up by performing light single-arm lat pull-downs. To perform the pull-up, grab the bar with your hands at or wider than shoulder width. Then, activate your upper back, angling your chest towards the bar. Next, pull with your back and bring your chest to the bar. It's okay to rest your feet on the ground between reps, as the aim of this exercise is to build strength rather than having perfect execution. You need to progress this movement through adding weight. This can be done with a backpack or a weightlifting belt with a chain attachment. Doing pull-ups for 10 plus repetitions is not going to generate the strength that you want. Add weight to the pull-up until you can only do 3 to 8 repetitions. I typically avoid falling under 3 reps, because if that happens, you're most likely lifting too heavy, your form breaks down, and with that, you're risking injury. If you can't do one bodyweight pull-up, don't try and use the assisted pull-up machine and crank out as many reps as you can, because remember, you need to be training strength, not endurance. If you can do 25 pull-ups on an assisted pull-up machine, you still will unlikely be able to perform one bodyweight pull-up. It's because you've been training muscular endurance. If you can't do one bodyweight pull-up, train assisted pull-ups, but ensure that they're at the correct intensity and in the correct rep range. Next up, we've got the deadlift. The deadlift is the ultimate full body exercise. It activates your glutes, hamstrings, hip flexors, lower back, upper back, forearms, mid back, and quads. There's a lot of muscles there. Some people believe that training the deadlift is dangerous. This is not true. Any exercise that is performed with correct technique is perfectly safe. For the deadlift, warm up like you would for the squat. Before I begin to deadlift, I like to perform Romanian deadlifts with the unweighted barbell. This helps further to activate the muscles I'm about to use during the deadlift. The deadlift is all about maintaining a neutral spine and hip flexion. Step up to the bar and grip the bar with a shoulder width stance, keeping your legs between your arms. Bring the bar to your shins. I like to then sink down as far to the ground as possible. This can seem a bit unconventional, but it helps to position your body correctly to begin the movement safely. The movement begins with pushing up through your legs. This is then taken over by hip extension, where you bring your hips forward whilst keeping a straight spine and tense upper back. Finish the movement by activating your glutes and pushing your hips forward. If you haven't trained the deadlift previously, I suggest starting with an exercise like Romanian deadlifts. This will help to develop the muscles that you need to be able to perform the deadlift safely. For proper execution of the deadlift and any other compound movement actually, it's important that you have full range of motion in your joints, no joint pain, full flexibility. All these things ensure that you're able to complete the movement correctly. So ensure that you are stretching out the correct muscles for the exercise that you're about to do and that you have no stiffness or any pain in the key areas. On to the last exercise now, we've got weighted step-ups. This is an exercise that is very specific to hiking and mountaineering. Training your strength through high intensity step-ups is a great way to develop functional strength. There are a few ways to do this exercise, either through using a weighted pack, holding onto dumbbells, or by having a barbell on your back. My favourite method for training strength with step-ups is using the barbell, as other methods can limit the amount of weight that you can carry. The step-up is a simple movement. Choose a stable object that is roughly the height of your knee, step up onto the object with one leg and allow the other to follow. Then, keep that leg that you just used to step up onto the object, on the object, and lower yourself back down with the opposite leg. Then, repeat this until you've completed 3 to 8 repetitions of the exercise per each leg. In terms of how much you should train, 10 sets per week per muscle group is the optimum amount of sets. But an important thing to note is that you don't actually need to complete 10 sets to get a good amount of strength gain for that week. In fact, if you just did 1 to 4 sets per week at the correct intensity and in the right rep range, you'd actually get 80% of the strength gain that you could have gotten for that week. So for the time conscious, 1 to 4 per week is very useful. It is important to note for mountaineering specifically, and really for any other sport that's training for athleticism and functional strength, that you shouldn't train your body to lift more than twice its own body weight for a given exercise. After 2 times body weight, you aren't going to receive many athletic benefits, and it's just risking injury, and developing too much muscle, as we said before, is just not needed in the mountains. Developing strength is one of the key elements for a successful training program for hiking and mountaineering, and often a good starting point for those who are just new to training. Remember, don't confuse strength with endurance training. The two are very different and both produce very different outcomes. Both are important, but you need to be able to differentiate between the two for successful training. To train strength, you need to expose your body to heavy loads. This can't be achieved through endurance-based exercises. If you found any of the information in this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like, comment, or subscribed. Train hard, and I'll see you on the next one.